feel like Destiny's got something planned. Like the Battle of the Dads. We're literally spending money for Steven's feelings. Did he just PMC student debt really? Chat, did he just Chapo Trap House that I wanted to understand his argument. I didn't want to just like toss it away out of hand. This is like a series of ass pulls, right? Are one or two of his ass pulls like maybe did he guess right on some of them? Maybe? What he's saying rests on every single ass pull being accurate. And Steven, brass ain't made of gold, okay? Oh my god, when did this happen? Oh, it's new. It just happened. Okay.
Everybody on my fan base knows who you are, but if you want, you can introduce yourself just for people that might not. Go for it.
My name is Sam Seder. Hello. Nice to see you all.
Gotcha. I'm Steven, aka Destiny, whatever. People know me from Politics Online. All right. I've been a big fan of yours for a long time. We've talked in the past on a podcast. I'm not a fan, however, of the Majority Report because I think that a lot of your conversations go significantly left of where I would take them. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about was student loan debt and like debt forgiveness because it's like a really hot topic in a lot of the online kind of world today.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to that. To be honest with you, like I
feel like Destiny's got something planned. I hope Sam is ready for that. Yeah.
A lot of other shows. I imagine you don't have a lot of time to do that yourself.
Yeah.
And so I was a little bit surprised that that's what you wanted to like. I guess my assumption has been that you would be for it. So I'm interested to find out what the issue would be. I think maybe just from a really super broad strokes perspective, I mean, maybe if we can
are we back to super broad strokes? God damn it!
Want out of public policy, just as a watershed to sort of assess it from that perspective.
I think from a broader point of view, if we were to back up and look at like education and what is the government's responsibility in education, I'm pretty sure that we would probably 100% agree on that. So like, I don't think that cost should ever be a prohibitive factor for people deciding to go to school. It seems like across most of Europe that results in like highly subsidized education, or if you don't have the means to pay for it, completely free education. We might quibble over like, should it be universally free versus should it be like, I guess, means tested free or whatever, but I'm pretty sure that you and I probably agree relatively similarly on that there should never ever be a single kid that wants to go to college but he has to make the decision not to because he either can't afford to go or can't afford to not work while going. Yeah.
Right. And I mean, I think, the best way to achieve that would be like a free option. State colleges,
sure,
as we call them now. Maybe they would have to be federally funded, where you would have the option, the ability to go to that college for free. There's some people I've actually interviewed professors who were concerned about the idea that we would be paying for someone to, free college to go to every college that is out there, and that's not what that idea would be. It would be to make sure that everybody has that option and that opportunity to go to college for free.
You like Steven's hair.
But broadly speaking too, I mean, I think even more broadly beyond education, the idea is that we want
is there wait, real quick, is there a way that you can boost your microphone just a little? I can't see a way to do it on. I don't want to.
I'm guessing what they're going to disagree on is what to do with the outstanding student debt. Destiny's very adamant about it not just being, like, forgiven. Destiny's huge on that, right? Sam is probably going to talk about the economic benefit to the society as a whole, freeing up people from this economic burden, the fact that Destiny, sort of admitted that, like, the debt kind of shouldn't be accrued in the first place, right? Whereas Destiny's going to, like, weird chant this idea that there's all these, but who goes to college? Rich people. So you're forgiving rich people's debt, and he's gonna basically try to sink it based on that.
It sound like I'm screaming over you or anything.
How about this?
Yep, perfect, great.
Is that better?
Yep. Okay,
And then broadly speaking, I think that like for me, the way that I assess a policy is that it helps. I mean, I tend to like universality in policies because I think it makes them more durable. I also think that often
Destiny says
means
turn up your
testing ends
gain.
up
Yeah.
being super inefficient if the idea is to save money on policies like that. But from a political standpoint, I think they're also much more durable. I also
Yeah, it's usually the option of last resort,
and I
right?
think the
If you can
the
boost the
idea
signal in
behind
any way other than gain, it's preferable.
um, for me for
Is
giving college debt is that it's going to free up a lot of people to make decisions that they wouldn't otherwise make. That the I don't think that the government should be in the business of making money. I mean, we both agree that the government should provide an option of free college to be making money
it actually does add gain.
college loans. I think also that we've seen the debt itself just in terms like what it the drag that it
It's the
acts on the economy. I think is highly problematic. And in addition to that, although you could probably deal with this through a change in bankruptcy law, it's very, very, very difficult to discharge this debt. So
Sam's got an SM7B. What's the mic that Destiny's got called?
broadly speaking, I mean,
I've seen that one a lot
those are my
too.
principles. But even I think there are other like sort of like subsets of that, which make this college debt even more problematic in my mind.
Gotcha. So,
That's just wait, a blue Yeti? Oh, it's a different model.
so there's a lot of different places to go with this. So we start off on the common ground that I think that
Or wait, just blue. Like yeah, the Yeti's a model. Sorry, it's a different
I think
model.
that we agree that
I'm
college
sorry.
should be free or heavily subsidized. I'm never going to fight on that in terms of
Much nicer model than a Yeti.
like somebody wants to make it universal versus means tested. Either way would be way better than what we have now, I think, in terms of making it more accessible for everybody. So the part that I kind of like lose people is that, where I lose people is that when we start to have broader conversations about like student loan debt and
He thinks that forgiving student loans debt involves spending money, which it doesn't. Yeah, like right. I mean, like, so what are you nodding to the fact that like we give money to banks all the time, but the little dudes come up and like I just naturally am like little dudes. Thanks for the follow, I think. Maybe? I don't know.
its impact on people that have that debt. When you talk about people that actually have degrees, I'm going to make
Oh, here we go. Here we go. It's all rich
a
people.
really extreme claim here. I think that the quote unquote student loan debt crisis, I think, is almost entirely fabricated. I feel like it's a hot talking point literally only because the vast majority of people that engage in online political discourse tend to be younger college graduates. So things like student debt forgiveness, like it speaks to them a lot because a lot of these people carry student loan debt. But when I look at like people that have debt and have graduated with a degree, like these people are massively out owning their high school graduate counterparts. These people are like, if we were to do any type of student debt forgiveness, it would be like a massively regressive distribution of wealth to people that are already going to be the highest earners in society.
He didn't even watch a single YouTube video before this debate.
It's going to be one of those issues where
My money's on Juche.
fortunately we have like limited government and political will to get things done. So it's just going to be a ding that you have to kind of like argue and fight for, that maybe there are better areas in society where the money could go towards. I don't think that student loan debt is like as much a drag as people say that it is. Like, I mean, it is kind of a drag, but literally all debt is a drag. Like you could forgive all credit card debt or forgive any type of debt and it would be less of a drag. But I think that in terms of like, if we wanted to give away like $1 trillion to society, I think it would be so much better to focus that on like working class people, or focus that like from a more bottom.
It's not just out of his ass, okay? What he does is more than just ass pulls, okay? He's mining grievance. So, in other words, what you see him doing is starting to paint a picture. Whose loans are we forgiving, right? Now, in reality, there's no way to paint a picture. It's a whole bunch of people. They're all different, you know? But he sort of knows how to hone in on a type of person that people will respond negatively to. So he started off, they're super online. Okay, we don't like that. They're leftists. Okay, we don't like that, and they've graduated from college, right? And I don't know, maybe if you haven't, you're a little jealous of that. I don't know. So he's like trying to kind of like, he's forgetting that, like, even if you don't graduate from college, you still get to pay back those loans. That is not like contingent on your graduation. But yeah, like he's basically trying to tell you, look, who's the person going to get their loans forgiven? These arrogant little trust fund snots living in like Wilmington. You know what I mean? He's painting a picture of just like somebody for us to hate. And then just like you don't really need logic at that point. Your audience will fill in the gaps. All right? They don't like the person that they think is getting the student loan forgiveness, therefore that person's, if they're going to make a special point to fuck that person. And yeah, that's how this logic's working.
Up approach rather than like targeting what are
A lot of Stephen's so-called rhetoric is more of a grievance mongering at like certain, like it's almost like he's pulling these people out of his ass. I mean, I'm sure people like that do exist, right? But like
going to be like the highest and most successful people in society anyway, basically, is kind of what I'm looking at.
Let's separate the political question for a moment, okay?
Sure.
I mean, because I think that there's definitely some arguments, regarding how it plays out politically, and
he's describing Sam.
that sometimes can be very hypothetical. If you had told me, 4 years ago that the Democrats could be on the verge of passing $4 trillion worth of infrastructure spending, with the Republicans,
Yeah, true, Lucifer.
complaining about critical race theories in kindergarten, I would be shocked.
Yeah.
So it's sort of hard to predict that.
Mhm.
But I think your perspective.
Oh yeah, it would be. It's a racist policy because it would have a greater proportionate impact on. Oh yeah, he'll throw white on that too. Yeah.
Of who will receive the benefit of this is wrong.
Oh, statistics actually disagree with him like 180%. 180 degrees.
And the idea that it's regressive is also wrong. I mean, I think my sense is just from what you.
A grudge thinly veiled and unsubstantiated. This is my problem, okay? Stephen's politics are becoming more and more boomer mauled as each day progresses. And the sad thing is that there's a market for that. Like, there's people out there that aren't boomers that are buying this shit. What the fuck?
Just said in terms of that it's actually you have been blinded by the online discourse
God,
of
Eris.
it
Oh
in
my
terms
God.
of who you
Hey,
may
Corvus.
think is the receiver of this debt. Part of that, I think, is a function
Mind.
of
Hive mind.
the studies that came out
Mind
in,
hive. I said mind
in
hive.
2020 that showed that it was regressive.
But like, I was thinking the
when they
same
looked
thing,
at
Samuel.
income.
I was thinking the same
And just
thing.
the idea of looking at people
Unironically.
about what they're going to make, and
Meow, meow,
also
meow. Oh, there they are.
a function of
my
those
God.
studies as to what they actually looked at, I think has created some inaccurate perceptions. There was a study that just came out a month or two ago. I think
Mind
it
hive
was,
is the
from
new meta. True.
Roosevelt Institute,
True.
by a couple of Princeton professors and a couple of professors from the University of California. I think it was Merced. And I have it here somewhere. And and if you look at wealth as opposed to household wealth, as opposed to income, you will find, and if you break it down in terms of race, you will find that this is actually incredibly progressive, and it's in fact more progressive the more debt that you relieve. The studies that were released had some serious methodological, you could say, flaws, unless you were trying to get to a certain conclusion. But if you look at things like wealth, and you look at actually who holds the majority of this debt, you'll find that it's actually not, you know, Brooklyn hipsters online. It's actually
Oh my God, Sam!
there's a huge
Thank you for
percentage
confirming
of
that
this
I'm
debt that's held
smart
by
by
African Americans.
agreeing with me. Sam
They,
exactly agreed with my
black
take.
people
Did
have
you hear that?
much
I said
more
Wilmington, he said
difficulty paying off
hipsters.
this debt
That's what
than
Destiny's got
white
in his
people
mind.
and Asian
This
people. In fact,
2014
in fact, I
hipster
did
hate boner that he's been
an interview
nursing,
with a
I guess,
guy
for a long ass
with one
time.
of the professors of this, a guy named Wary, Frederick Wary.
I mean, this is kind of a throwback.
and
It's not like a huge throwback.
It was pretty
It's
shocking.
not like one of Sam's
I have to say, 'cause,
throwbacks,
on
right?
some
But it's a
level,
pretty big
I wasn't as
throwback,
concerned
like, right?
with
This
the aggressive
archetype
nature as
that he's
you
building.
might be, but
I don't know.
I think I had a perception that was maybe somewhat similar to yours.
But yeah, this is what Destiny's
After
doing.
20
It's just
years,
literally he's
white
recycling
people
the
have
anti-hipster
paid back
kind of
94%
discourse.
of their loans, college loans. Black student owes 95%. And a big part of this is because, and I'm sure you know that there is a serious wealth disparity. You could have, and even though we now know too from studies that similarly situated, black boys and white boys, when they get older, will, as adults, as men, will have an income disparities, even if presumably all the other factors are the same. There's such a massive wealth disparity between white people and black people in this country that any dollar made by a white person has far less claim to it than a dollar made by a black person. So you may need to help your parents. You may need to help other members of your family. You may have more expenses insofar as that you haven't had wealth passed down. So the reality is it's actually very progressive, and it becomes more progressive the more money you forgive, in part because black people hold more debt and low wealth families hold more debt. And the first $2,500 is deductible on your taxes.
So,
when they agree on issues versus
I'm familiar
CTV
with the
being
Roosevelt
like,
study,
what about the Federal
or the
Reserve?
Roosevelt study? And I feel like the methodology on this study is unbelievably flawed, like such that when I was reading it when it came out, because
It's
I've
almost
heard
like it was written
about
by
how
hipsters.
regressive debt relief is, and then when
Destiny,
they come out
it was
with, well,
almost
actually,
like it was
it's
written
progressive.
by hipsters, wasn't
I was
it?
curious, like, wow, that's a much different claim than
Fucking
what I've heard.
hipster
But
study
the way
methodology.
That they
What
try
the
to figure
fuck?
this out, I can't help but feel like they just desperately want to answer the question of like, how do we make it so that we can forgive student loans and make it sound progressive when it's not? I don't know why you would ever compare wealth as opposed to earnings to figure out if debt relief was a positive or a negative. Like somebody that has, so for an example, if we were to try to target some form of stimulus to somebody, you can have a person that's 75 and graduating with $200,000 in the bank, which is pretty bad if you're retiring at 75 with $200,000 in the bank, and you can compare them to somebody that just got out of med school. And we could argue that we should be stimulating the guy that just graduated with his medical degree because he has less wealth, maybe even a negative net worth compared to the older person. Wealth is largely a function of age, and student loan debt is largely acquired in the earlier parts of your life. I have no idea why somebody would like conduct a study and argue for the progressivity of the forgiveness of student loans based on wealth when student loan debt is literally specifically taken on at the parts of your life where you have the least amount of wealth. And the people that are the wealthiest tend to be like at the end of their lifetime of earnings. There was actually one of the researchers that were cited in that Roosevelt Institute paper, Sylvain Catherine, because I was kind of looking around because their paper was cited a lot, and they echo much the same. There's like a big Twitter thread where they kind of talk about how the problems with doing this is that wealth is always going to be correlated with age versus income and earnings, which is really what you're looking for with the degree. A degree isn't about getting wealth. You don't get a big like jackpot reward when you get a degree.
I feel like we're getting
get more earnings in the future, right? The net present value of a degree is pretty high. You mentioned the wealth disparity, and that's kind of like the thing that I'm interested in when we talk about like stimulus for a society. And I think that the problem with doing like
apparently
student loan
CTV
forgiveness
has talked to
is
Destiny
that
now.
The biggest driver,
like
it sounds counterintuitive. When you ask me like, what is the biggest driver of wealth inequality in society today? You know, usually people say Jeff Bezos or landlords are evil, blah, blah, blah. One of the biggest drivers of wealth disparity is actually college diplomas. Like a college degree nets you like a $20,000 average earning increase over somebody that doesn't have a college degree. And high school wages have been relatively stagnant as college wages increase and increase and increase. And you can see this over time when you plot like median wages for college degrees versus high school earnings. So the idea that we need to do targeted stimulus to give those specific groups of people money just because currently in life their wealth is low when you'd expect their wealth to be low. That Roosevelt Institute study I thought was really, really, really bad. I don't ever see why you would like try to graph against wealth, you know, who ought to be getting any kind of stimulus when I look at it that way.
Well, the reason why, I mean, it really gets to what's the purpose of this, right? I mean, we have a massive wealth disparity problem between black and white people in this country. And we know that black people disproportionately hold student debt. We also know that they have far lower graduation rates than white and Asian people. So the idea that they're even necessarily going to that they're even going to make the money that you presume is not necessarily the case. But this is why you would look at wealth as opposed to income. Because if you're measuring progressivity in this sense, the idea is that you want to help people who need the most help, right? And the question is, how do you measure that? If I am a black man who's 54 years old, my expenses relative to, you know, my parents, relative to, maybe even the debt that I've had to take on because I have less of an ability to, I mean, baked into your assumption is that my income, my income potential is the same as a white person who has a degree, because the value of the degree, you need to look at race, which is why they specifically do this in this study. But every claim on my dollar is much more dramatic than it would be if I was a white person, because broad strokes, statistically speaking, because my parents don't have as much money, and so they may need more help in their retirement than they would if I was
most
white.
of the debt. Oh, that's a good
just
point.
simply the case. And so
most debt
when you're measuring
is
this
held by those
progressivity,
who didn't
the reason why
finish
you
their
would look
degree.
at wealth in this circumstance is because it's not enough to say what's my earning potential going to be, even though it is less with my college degree than it would be for a white person. It is because there are more claims on my dollar if I'm to live a quality of life, right? Because we're not really just talking about money. We're talking about quality of life, your ability to care for the people around you, or the need to. And so, that is why you would look at wealth as opposed to income, because it's really not a question of just a number, right? It's a question of what you can do with that number. And if I have more claims, statistically, I do if I'm black, because I have family members, I have parents, my responsibilities are greater to them. I don't have as much wealth in my house because it's been passed on, and my house is not worth as much, because that's just statistically the case. I mean, this is a function of, I'm sure of hundreds of years of both institutional and governmental and societal issues that have created this wealth disparity. But the wealth disparity actually has real world implications. And that's why you would look at that and measure progressivity that way.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that there is wealth disparity. Absolutely. I just targeting student loan debt where a disproportionate amount of the debt is held by white people just seems like it's just going to grow that disparity. Like, I think the problem is we're looking at like trying to...
But you're looking at it, and this is one of the other things that they corrected in this.
So he's wrong about that,
You're
right?
looking at the pool of debt holders, but if you want to measure progressivity, you got to measure it across the
what Steven just said was like
of the entire population.
Objectively false.
And black people represent about 13% of our population. They hold more than double
I bet I know
that.
what the
Like
disparity is. I bet I know what number Steven's looking at. Yeah, I bet I know what happened. I bet I know what happened.
Of wealth disparity.
Steven's using like raw number of amount of debt held by
for instance,
black
Ivy League
debt holders versus white debt holders. But
public student debt that is held by Ivy League.
I think Sam's taking into account the proportion of the population.
And that is because wealthy people and I'm talking not within the pool of people who borrow money, but I'm talking the pool
I mean,
of our
he's
our
either
society,
lying
of
or
people
he's
who
like
go to
posting
college.
like massive
Wealthy people
cringe
don't need
in
loans
terms of like
in
the
way
numbers he's
that
drawing from.
people who don't have wealth need them. And you know, you take out the loan based upon the wealth that you have and the wealth that your family has. And even if you project forward as to what the value of that's going to be in the future, the fact is, for a disproportionate number of those people who take loans, it's going to be less than it would be for white people. But that's the basis in which you get a loan is based on wealth, right? I mean, not on income.
I understand that, but what I'm saying, what the problem is you're not helping to alleviate any of the problems between the class of white people and the class of black people. All you're helping is wealthy black people further themselves from poor black people, and wealthy white people further themselves from poor white people. That the issue here is that like if we were talking about we need to do some sort of targeted stimulus to kind of close the gap between white wealth and black wealth, you would have to move outside of an area where the vast majority of the debt is being held by white people. It might be that as a percentage of the debt held compared to the number of people
isn't he wrong about that too?
That, like,
isn't he wrong about both? Isn't he wrong about both of these?
Is that as if you look at the whole pool of money and we were to forgive like big chunks of that pool of money or all of that pool of money, a vastly disproportionate amount of that wealth is going back into white people as opposed to black people. I don't think that there's a problem with trying to shore up differences in wealth between the classes, between white people and black people, I'll say. But I think that that's impossible to do via just blanket forgiveness when it comes to student loans. If we were to talk about things like income-based repayment programs that are based on like the income that you're earning after school, I think that programs like this would do a way better job at targeting low-income people, which in this case oftentimes will be black workers.
Amount of money, or are we talking about amount of money proportionate
but just
to
doing
the
this
population?
like kind of like blanket forgiveness, I think it's like 60%
I mean, don't
of
just
debt or
logic
whatever
this
is held by
out.
people
You
that
know,
are
I mean,
going
like
for
if there's
graduate degrees.
numbers,
A majority of these people
you
which are
know,
white.
like sometimes
I don't think that
conventional
you're ever
wisdom does
closing
not hold
gaps
up.
between
Like
white and black
sometimes,
people
like
by
the
doing college
study does not show
education debt forgiveness.
what
You're just
conventional
growing
wisdom
the
would
difference between poor
predict.
black people and wealthy black people, or poor white people and wealthy white people.
That's, I mean, that last part is not true. The fact of the matter is that this study is specifically across not the pool of borrowers. Again, it is across the entire population. So, for instance, the in this report, distribution of debt cancellation.
Do we need to get CTV's broad brush in here?
That's the most
Oh my God,
expensive,
Chad! I can't
right? That's
believe
the
that
$50,000
CTV debate. If you
a
haven't,
white person by household,
if you got here
asset
late,
quantile
okay. If you
has an
didn't see
even
the
more
CTV
progressive downward
debate,
slope
check back
than
on
we
the
saw
VOD
for all
because
racial
holy
groups combined.
shit,
White people in households in the top
dude just
10%
like said some
would
weird shit about
receive, just an average,
segregation.
the top 10%.
I would have never
of wealth
expected to hear him say
would
that
receive
out
an average of
loud. At least
$648 in debt cancellation per person. And the biggest
CTV versus
benefit
Rose
is for people, white people in the households at the bottom 20%. This is across the population, right? This is the 20 percentile.
CTV said something really fucking weird.
Least wealthy white people
like
in the
something
country
about under segregation
would receive
like
an average of
which side of the street to walk on.
$27.59.
I'm still trying to like
white people in
imagine
households
how
in the
that
20th to 40th percentile.
Like I'm trying to like figure out like did he mean
so
something
6
else?
times as much
did it
as the
sound,
top 10%.
You know, like right.
People in the bottom 20% would
it's
get
just like
4 times as much debt relief as the top 10%.
Really weird thing to
and
say.
It's a similar
really
dynamic in the context of black people. So they're not looking at rich. The assumption that rich black people go to college and take loans versus poor black people is wrong. It's just simply not what the data shows. I mean, it's an assumption that we make, but if you look into who's going to school, it is people who are not making money, particularly in black people. Like when you look at for-profit universities, which drives a lot of this of public.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I mean, like
you've got older black.
Like I called out
women
problems with platforming, starting with the Rob Noor incident
in their job,
and moving on to more recently bringing on Haas
to these colleges.
Bringing on an actual Nazgul to debate panels to talk about pineapple on pizza.
Very
Making
often
him
it doesn't
feel like
work out.
just another debate, bro.
We're talking
just
about
another
who
debate, bro.
Holds the debt.
Yeah,
but again, all of this is
but this
and I
goes
see this on
back
page 15.
further.
I read
Like,
over this last night.
There's
The problem
problems
is that
with
all of this is still
CTV.
working on a function of household wealth, which I just think is wholly irrelevant to the conversation of student loan debt. So I could ask you a million
Fucking
questions related to
yikes.
doing stimulus, and in none of these circumstances would you ever agree that household wealth is an appropriate way to look at things. Like if let's say that I was going to means test a $5,000 stimulus check, and
Oh
I could
God,
give it to a
Steven
household with a wealth of
loves
$200,000
means
that
testing.
comprises two 63-year-old senior
Which is
citizens
weird
just
because,
starting
like,
to
the
collect
thing about means
Social
testing,
Security, or a household
a
that
lot
has
of
like
times
a
it
net
costs
value
more
of negative
to
$50,000, and it's a
gatekeep
guy that
people
just
that aren't
graduated with a
applying
law
for certain
degree or with a
benefits than it does to,
PhD or
like,
a medical degree or whatever.
just
We're never,
have the
ever,
policy
ever, ever
without,
in
like,
any
a
other part of
restriction.
society looking at household wealth.
So you end up
to
spending
determine
more
who should
money
be
on the
stimulated.
program because you're like,
This is just it is. I truly can't think
on
of
this
any other part of
anti-free
society.
rider
Because you're always
mentality,
looking
right?
at earnings potential. You're looking at like what is their lifetime earnings potential, or what is their future earnings potential. These questions are always going to guide the conversation better rather than.
We're doing that
I guess
with the
Steven
child.
wants. Oh, let me pause it for
We're
it.
doing
so
that
we,
in some
sorry.
fashion with the child income tax credit, aren't we? I
No,
mean,
absolutely.
because-
That's the exact. It's only based on income. That's how that.
No,
I think Steven wants to wants to just consider income. And Sam's talking about wealth, and Steven's, dead set on telling us why wealth is immaterial. I don't know, chat. It's weird.
no, it's also based on having a child. So it's also based upon the expenses that are associated with having a family.
Well, for the child, or go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I'm just talking about the broad principle here. I mean, because we don't have, and the broad principle here is that the expenses associated with where you're situated have an impact as to whether you qualify for this, right? If you have kids, you get this money. If you don't have kids, you don't, because theoretically your burdens are less.
Yeah.
Well, conceptually speaking, if you have a cohort of people, in this instance, Black people, who have less intergenerational wealth, and they have, and
the completion rate is significantly lower among Black student loan borrowers. Bureaucratic red tape pretty much always costs more than... Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's exactly that. It's exactly that, Drakewing. Costs more than it would make... Yeah, so basically the only real reason to do these policies that they have of, like, means testing is just because they, like, it makes them feel good. We're literally spending money for Steven's feelings when we're doing shit like that.
Same responsibilities. The claim on each dollar, and because we're talking about something different really than actually like providing a stimulus, providing debt relief. The claim on each dollar, every time that dollar comes in, there's less room to build assets with it. And so if you have a lawyer who has $50,000, a white person who has $50,000 worth of debt, statistically speaking, they're going to be able to build assets far quicker than a Black person exactly the same situated, because statistically speaking, that Black person has far more claims on their dollar because their parents don't have money, because they don't have the assets that already begin there. I mean, that's just the reality of it.
Okay, so like, so firstly, to be clear with the
Like the battle of the dads.
child tax credit, the amount that you get is actually based on your adjusted gross income. Your AGI, when you file your taxes, is going to determine your...
Well, no, the primary indicator is if you have children.
It is, but then how much money you get is somebody that has a kid and files taxes, right? Because we have this on Who Claims Which Child or whatever, right? Is you have like a modified adjusted gross income. That's what determines the amount of payback that you get.
Yes.
Number one. Number two, so when we talk about like who has the wealth to pay for college, wealth that you have at different stages in your life, I don't think is
The fourth time Sam has tried to explain this.
necessarily the same. So a common argument that conservatives will use or something is like, oh, like, Bernie Sanders is a millionaire,
You know what? I've been thinking about this lately, and like I have definitely seen debate bros use what might be real, like, lack of understanding of an opponent's argument, or I suspect might be a play acted non-understanding, right? It's kind of like if you don't want to deal with an argument, pretending that you don't understand it, and especially if you blame the person giving the argument, like you tell them that was incoherent, if there's a percentage of your audience that also didn't understand the argument, or like, let's say you do understand the argument, you just don't want to deal with it, like, anyone in your audience who doesn't understand the argument will be like, ah, I see, my person said it's not a real argument, so it sounded really complicated, I wasn't sure, is this an own, what is this, but now since they're telling me it's nonsense, I don't have to worry about it. And you'll like retain more, you know what I mean, instead of having that one of those moments where like everybody in the room sees that you're wrong. You're gonna have your core like 40% of Trump supporters, that like support you no matter what.
Well, why is it that when we say that like an 80-year-old or whatever is a millionaire, why does that hit a little different than if you're a millionaire like when you're 30, right? Having $1 million when you're 75 years old, or having some decent level of household wealth when you're 75, 80 years old is way different than having even a fraction of that when you're younger, because you have the ability to earn so much more going forward. Like I guess we're kind of stuck. Like there's just the current wealth that you have is just such an irrelevant thing. Like you have to factor in like age and then future earnings potential to figure out like where is the true health. Like if you want to do a more fair comparison, I think it would be like the lifetime average earnings and then the wealth at the end versus just your present wealth, because somebody that's 70 years old that has $250,000 is not going to have the same amount of money as somebody that's 32, has a law degree, or just graduated as a doctor and currently has a negative net worth because of loans they have. By the time they're in their 70s or 80s, they're going to be worth millions, tens of millions maybe, depending on their investments.
Well, exactly. But the reality is that for Black people,
Oh my God,
those numbers
yeah,
are
Destiny's
density, I guess. Even if they have the same,
not to understand,
even if they are similarly
like, some
situated, they graduate from the same
straightforward
college, they have the same
arguments.
degree, they're going to make less. A, and
And
B,
so Sam's
the way
getting
that they
stuck going in
invest, they have
circles.
less opportunity. Why? Because when Blacks own a home, it will increase in value at a far less.
I'm gonna have to put that CTV video out. I don't know what else to do, chat.
It will grow
You
far
have to
less
see that
over
to
the
believe
course
it.
of that person's life than white people. That's just the fact, because of the nature.
Earlier in the stream, we watched a debate of Rose Russ debating against CTV, and oh my God, was it ever, it was. CTV said some stuff in there that I'm still trying to imagine a way that it's not as bad as it sounds. But it sounded like an endorsement of segregation. Right?
Of racism and of
I'm hoping there's some explanation of how maybe it's not really like as bad as it sounds, but what do you do with like under segregation people knew which side of the street to walk on? Like what the fuck does that mean?
legacy of racism. The
Yeah.
ability of, so when we talk about wealth disparity, we're including those 70-year-old
But
Black
yeah,
people.
Rose Rest really like kind of exposed something of CTV there. Like it's like he said himself that he always watched CTV on the Hippy Dippy panels, and he kind of wanted to see what some of those beliefs, what some of those takes that CTV had looked like when they were like pushed at by one person over an extended period of time. And yeah, we saw kind of some really interesting shit. Some really, really like amazing, entertaining, not good shit.
And we're including those 70-year-old white people. That disparity exists. It exists throughout the entire.
Check it out on the VOD if you get the chance. I'll try to put it up on YouTube, honestly.
The entire.
It's a very entertaining debate.
Age brackets everywhere, and it doesn't even out at one point. Black people don't catch up as a broad cohort. It's just the fact of the matter. And this actually, debt forgiveness would help on some level, because it would give a greater opportunity. Because look, here's the difference. If your parents are wealthy and you need to take debt, at the end of their life, you have a better opportunity of inheriting money, which gives you less of a pressure on having to invest and build assets. B, you don't have to take care of them, so you can dedicate more of your income towards building assets, investing, doing whatever it is. You're also white. Your opportunity to buy a house and be in your parents' house is going to have more value than they would.
How is Destiny going to spin this one as a W? Because it's not that Destiny doesn't take L's. He takes L's all the time. He just doesn't take them very well. And sometimes he can turn an L into an argument that the person who gave it to him is like guilty of some horrible fucking offense. And that guilt overrides any like, sense of loss like, from him, right?
Would if they're black. I mean, that's why it makes a difference. Why the assumption that the wealth is going to grow over the course of those 50 years or whatever it is just it's an assumption that is not borne out by the data. You just don't have the same opportunity to build assets, regardless of what your projected income is, because even the projected income you're talking about is you have to disaggregate.
I mean, I guess what he's saying is that he doesn't like Sam's got a study that like uses like wealth, and Destiny wants to stick to earnings. Destiny doesn't think wealth is like relevant here.
It because you're
and Sam's kind of explaining why it is in fact relevant.
not getting the clear picture.
I mean, I don't disagree with a lot of the things that you're saying. I think the 2007-2008 housing crisis is a really good example of a lot of like household wealth being wiped out and then being recovered in the aggregate. But when you break it down, white households recovered and a lot of black households still haven't come back from that. I don't disagree with any of that. I think that there are so many better ways. And this is actually, I guess this is kind of like the foundation of what I kind of want.
Destiny already accused Sam of being a delusional, overeducated, spoiled lefty. That's right. All lefties are rich. All lefties have trust funds.
Wanted to talk at the beginning. If we wanted
all lefties live in Wilmington, Destiny, do all lefties live in Wilmington? Unironically, is that what you think?
Help.
Are we all residents of Wilmington?
Working class communities.
Destiny.
Or even more specifically, if we wanted to help.
This is what he does, like, right? There's no, like, fucking logic. There's no discourse. There's just the reversion to some sort of, like, manufactured outrage against fucking stereotypes of people.
Black communities, or we wanted to try to bridge the gap between white and black communities more. It feels like there are so many better ways.
Wealth is relevant. Saying it doesn't matter makes you look clueless.
That we could target stimulus or money to those communities.
I know, where's my trust fund, right?
Even, I wouldn't suggest this because obviously it would be a huge political loser, but even like a black student loan debt forgiveness would be way better than what we're talking about right now, which is pumping $1 trillion into, or 1.7, I guess now, into student debt forgiveness, when so much of that is just going to white people that are already going to be earning so much more going forward, being part of the like managerial upper elite class of like 4-year degree holders.
Did he just PMC student debt relief? Chat, did he just Chapo Trap House that shit? What did we just see? I was about to say, like, I don't know, like, with Chapo, I always thought it was, like, that they were hipsters and they were kind of, like, self-hating, you know, a little, they were, like, kind of, like, making fun of themselves with all the Wilmington stuff, but, like, this is legit, like, I don't know, this is giving Chapo vibes somehow.
In the United States.
Well, one, we're not talking about expending $1.7 trillion because the actual expenditure, I mean, a lot of that is interest, right? I mean, that's just accruing.
Oh yeah, that is pretty fucked, Drakewing. I didn't even catch that. You're right. Pumping $1 trillion into student debt forgiveness.
In interest. I mean, it's not money that we ever expended in any way. So, I mean, and now you're getting more into like the political argument of it, which I think, maybe more problematic. But and I think that like maybe Medicare for all would be better for black people, but it's far more expensive on a I don't have necessarily a problem with that, but I don't think that this is not it's not clear to me that in the absence of Joe Biden, let's say, by executive action, saying, I'm going to forgive this debt, that it's foreclosing the opportunity for anything else. I mean, I would argue that maybe on some level it could create political, momentum to actually do more.
Yeah. Oh no. Here's how it works. Okay. So right now we're in a place where like grumpy sourpuss assholes are using the fact that there are other, places that money could be useful, right? As a reason not to take care of something that's a drag on our economy, that causes lots of misery, that is just like fucking so many of us over, right? He's going to use, well, nope, you could also use the money on that, and that's pretty, I mean, can you argue that this is more important than that? Really, the answer is we should do neither, right? That's, no, it's not, actually, that's probably not what Destiny would say. He'd get mad at me for accusing him of that. I've already anticipated that. So, yeah, like, I don't know, he has, like, I mean, in his mind, he says, like, if he could get it through, he'd have a pretty vigorous welfare state. So, he would probably argue that there's other ways of taking care of that, and he's not against taking care of it. He just doesn't want to take care of it like this way. I don't know. I've listened to entirely too much of Destiny's student loan shit because it's like one of those things that I vehemently disagreed with him about, and so I wanted to understand his argument. I didn't want to just like toss it away out of hand. And the more I understand it, the less like I feel like tossing it away would have been a mistake.
I mean, that's debatable, but I think it's debatable. At this point, I mean, the hypothetical alternative that you're talking about, I don't know what that hypothetical alternative is.
Well, I think something like income based.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that the government is the originator of the loan. So forgiving the loan doesn't mean spending money. It just means that like you're not gonna, oh, here's the spicy take. All right, chat, in a lot of these circumstances, the loan, the borrower is not able to repay much of anything. So we're going to take a lot of like loans that weren't going to be repaid, but instead like of being repaid, they were going to ruin someone's life. They were going to ruin someone's credit. They were going to like, doom them to like misery. We're going to take those and we're going to instead forgive the loans. And guess what? Just like before, we're not getting paid. Those aren't being paid back. They weren't going to be paid back anyway. So we really haven't lost anything on a lot of these, like, in a lot of these cases. And, we're not out money. It's just like,
payment or something like that, I think would be a way.
I don't, why am I saying this? Like, it's such a weird conception because I'm like thinking like the way I'm saying it, it's like we're over here, we're the people that we're the US government, and then there's the student loan borrowers over there, and we're like, okay, so we want to forgive your debts, but that doesn't mean that we have to like give you money. That just means that we have to like not take money from you. I don't know. But it's just such a weird thing because, like, when you talk about politics, that's what you always say. When you talk about something the government does, you say we took in X amount of money in taxes. It's just such a weird thing since, like, the people who really make those decisions, primarily not you and I, primarily not people like us.
Better rather than just giving so much. It's just I just. When I try to think of like student debt forgiveness, I guess if you're talking about like getting rid of interest,
it's like that thing where you talk about U.S. foreign policy and you're like, well, we invaded Vietnam, and it's like, wait, did we? Am I responsible for the Vietnam War a little bit? I don't know.
whatever, just like the money
Well,
owed. It's like,
But it's rhetoric. It's not like it's just like conceptual.
Is taking these loans? Do you think wealthy white people are?
yeah, they could, sure.
Answer: he doesn't know.
Well, I mean, they could take public loans, but they're not.
All I know is that like 60% of all the student loan debt is held by white people, and it's like 20. I think it's like 25% is held by black people.
I wonder who it was. It was some YouTube creator Thought Simon?
Now we can fudge that and look at like household wealth to try to like massage these numbers better. But if I was to give $1 trillion back to society, I don't want 60% of that going to white people that are going to be doing just fine because they have college degrees.
Well, no,
like
but
that's
no,
just
I
so
mean,
much wasted money. Like
It takes a lot of SEO to make that argument like viable. It's incredibly wild to me that takes like this are like, you know what I mean? Like this is the successful streamer, right?
especially because you're talking about growing wealth inequality, which we are between college educated people and high school educated, and you're growing inequality between white and black people because the majority of this wealth, 60%, will be going to white people, even if like as a percentage of the race, like maybe black.
This is like a series of ass pulls, right? Now, is one or two of his ass pulls like maybe right? Like, did he guess right on some of them? Maybe. But what he's saying rests on every single ass pull being accurate. And Steven, brass ain't made of gold, okay?
People getting more, like that's just there are just so many better ways to target stimulus to those communities than just giving white people who are already like in the upper echelon of society so much more
but they're
money.
not already up in the echelon. You're saying that you're anticipating that their college degree.
That's what, thank you. Yeah. This is what I'm saying. It's an ass pull. It's like okay. I mean, there's a reason why Destiny thinks these things. And a lot of people might take the fact that it's like they sound true. You know what I mean? Like, if you make this take, it sounds reasonable, and somehow it just gets accepted. And it's based on nothing. And like for him to be right, like every single one of these assholes has to be like, yep, got that one right, that got, and your ass is not that lucky, Steven. Your ass is not that lucky.
Will necessarily get them there.
You are not the goose that laid golden eggs.
I mean, all I can tell you is that when you've got the president, the former president of the U.S.
Regressdony.
Association of Home Builders was saying even up by 3 or 4 years ago, the number one.
I mean, I don't like this take. I mean, I'm not like evaluating the person, right? I'm evaluating like just like the take is flawed. The take is flawed.
The number one block to new housing starts was college debt. We're seeing,
and I mean, I don't like this kind of argument, right? All he's doing is coming up with like a stereotype for us to hate, and expecting us to agree with him because we hate fucking hipsters from Wilmington that probably have trust funds, and they're the ones that have all the student debt. And it's a complete ass pull. It's a complete ass pull. It's a completely emotional argument. It's like everything that DGG is supposed to stand against. And I'm just sitting here wondering, like,
this is a generation too that we're talking about now, but we're talking about now that are earning far less than people who are building the.
Also, Destiny doesn't look. I don't know. Like, I keep like wondering if he's like. I don't know. I'm not trying to. Oh god, this makes it sound like I'm trying to like. Take a dig or something. I was just like. Is there something wrong with him here? Like, I don't know. Is he not feeling good? Like, I feel like there's something we don't know here, right? This isn't like
these assets that you're using these numbers against.
He's just acting a little funny, and I'm not sure what's going on.
Baby boomers and Gen Xers There
Is there something going on with him? Like, I mean, is there something like he's like, is there like a reason?
their opportunity to build those assets is less. And if you're saying this is a scarcity argument, I mean, if there's something wrong in and of itself with the policy, that's one thing. But I mean, if you're saying it's a scarcity argument, I just don't see that. I mean, like I said, like the concept that we were doing a $4.5 trillion infrastructure bill, which I think could very well happen. 3 years ago, I think was sort of hard to imagine. I mean, look, let's put it this way: from a political standpoint, like how much are we collecting right now in student debt?
Like, what are the monthly or what are the yearly payments to the federal government?
Yeah, like
Don't tell me. This would be the third time. If Sam goes exactly where I went, this would be the third time that I predicted Sam's argument. And I wasn't even trying to. I was just giving my argument.
what
It's
are we?
about
But the fact that, like, oh my god, I'm so proud, chat. This is the dude that I learned politics from, okay? This is the dude.
$70 billion, I think.
Right now, we're collecting nothing. And we haven't collected any of
This was my first debate, bro. Sam Seder.
it for over, by the time September, when this thing is up, the moratorium is up, we haven't accrued interest or collected anything in over a year and a half.
Sure.
And you hear nothing about that. And so as a political matter, I'm just not convinced that it has the salience that people says. I mean, it is. I don't think that we should do this. I'm just not convinced that there's a either or choice here. This is one of the few things that Biden will have an opportunity to do unilaterally that could have this type of impact. None of the other policies that we're talking about are something that he could do unilaterally.
Yeah,
I don't
mean,
know.
there's
And so, I'm not sure I would do it now if I was him. I think I would extend the moratorium and push it into next year after the last bite at the reconciliation apple that we have.
And what worries me is that this kind of grievance politics, yo, that's what's fucked up. That's what really scares me. This is grievance politics, okay? You know who else uses grievance politics? Trump. Trump's really good. Like, almost everything he does is grievance, right? It's just fucking that wing of the party's whole ability to exist is just like based on grievance, right? And you're seeing more and more of this incredibly bad faith shit. It just has no place to. And it's not just like an argument, you know what I mean? It's like weaponized. It's like not only are the people that we're describing in this stereotype pieces of shit who deserve the worst we can possibly give them, you're a piece of shit for defending them by disagreeing with us, right? That's the implication, right? And that's what's so gross about it, is it's not just like an argument, it's an intimidation, right? You're gonna pay a price, like social media wise, for having this viewpoint now because you're perceived as agreeing with this stereotype that they're mining grievance and outrage against. Like, as a tactic, this is bad shit. Irrespective of, like, the political content that this particular use of the tactic is defending. Like, I don't like this shit. I'm sick of this shit. Can we not just have a debate and like win or lose or whatever, right? But it's like if we come out on top, then we have to fight a PR war against you assholes. That's fucked up. Can we just leave it at the debate? You get clapped, you get clapped. Okay, no second chances by like trying to fucking manage the PR after the debate and turn it into like, oh no, do you hear, like, you know, no comment check is yikes, and like, no, dude, you were cringe. That was the story of WrestleBrania. You posted fucking cringe. You looked bad. End of story. This should have been end of story. But with these fucking debate bitches, you got to deal with a PR onslaught after they get clapped.
But then you're talking about a policy that like he can do
I'm
unilaterally.
so done with
and
it. I'm so
I don't know
fucking
what
done
else
with
could
it.
have that stimulative effect. Also, the help in terms of allowing a black middle class to gain some ground in terms of the wealth
It's total war, huh?
disparity, and the creation and expansion of a black middle class.
Hey, resourceful.
Because I think a lot of those folks are not there yet. That's why you take a loan.
Sure. So there's a couple things. There's a couple things. So I know that there are statements from that from I don't remember his name about how student loan debt is preventing people from. It's like the number one blockade between a millennial and getting a house. But I think that when people go back and they study that issue, I wish I had this offhand. I had this last night. But but we know this anecdotally. The number one issue with millennials is that we all entered the job market in 2007, 2008, 2009. It was during the Great Recession, and that had a
Um. Oh, but they do shit against your ethical code of conduct and deal with people like me. Oh, sorry, I'm like reading a conversation. Sorry. Um, psychology. Okay.
massive impact on our ability to get paid to like get a house. I remember just anecdotally, I was working at a casino at the time, and I remember that like the 401k matches were good. The cafeteria had hot food every day. They were like, there were so many different bonuses, and all of that got stripped away. And I don't remember any of it coming back when the economy started to pick back up again. Because of it, yeah, if they can take it, they can keep it. But so like I don't believe that just like giving all that money back. I think that the one that I was looking back last night, it was like for every $10,000 in student debt or whatever, there's like a 2% like blockade from getting a house. Like it might be preventing some people from buying houses a little bit sooner, but it's hard to talk about houses because so much else is going on with them. Like for instance, right now, like the price of housing is soaring ridiculously. If we compare how easy it was to get a house now versus a decade and a half ago, well, in 2005,
Yeah.
your little brother that's like 19 years old and cuts grass can get a house because literally anybody will write him a loan to buy a house. So it's really hard to make those comparisons.
Well, I think that supports my argument because I can tell you this: the price of college and the amount of debt. This debt is not something that has been a part of American life for even 25 years. This debt has grown exponentially over the past 10, 15, 20 years, tops. The price of college has gone up 4 times in 35 years. And I can tell you, that's when I went to college. I went to college 35 years ago. And so the argument that you're making, this is targeted when we talk about student debt largely on that cohort of people that you're talking about. Everybody who has, graduated in the wake of the recession. So all of those problems that you're talking about, you can either say it's a,
Like, I don't know. I'm just like, I'm worried, right? Because like the grievance politics thing, I don't know. Like, I mean, there's something about it that tends to like lend itself to conservatism, right? And that's kind of a best case scenario, that it's just conservatism, right? Because like I said, this is the Trump bread and butter. This is what Trump does. This is how Trump works. This is how Trump survives. This shit right here, right? We're seeing Steven do it, this one time. He's definitely done it before. It's becoming more and more of a pattern. I'm not saying that that means that Steven's gonna be fucking, becoming a Trumper in 2024 or something like that, right? But like, it's just kind of, I don't know. It's kind of sad, right? Because like, I like debates.
This may not be the primary reason in which there are
Believe it or not, I have fond memories of Destiny's debates.
less housing starts. There may also be because there's less the income trajectory is has flattened too for these generation of people. But these are the people who need that type of relief, and it's targeted in that way.
Again, I don't think the income trajectory is flattened. I think it's higher than ever. I think that's one of the reasons why when we say that, like, the debt is growing more and more and more. Well, that's because like 40 years ago, you didn't necessarily need a college degree to like make it in the economy. Nowadays, that requirement is becoming higher and higher and higher. So of course you're seeing the student debt rise because more people are taking out money for a degree, but that's because the net present value of those degrees has just increased over time, and it's becoming one of these.
Presume that
People can say that they presume it, and people can cry on Reddit or whatever all they want, but people in the real world know. You know that if you only have a high school degree, if you don't have training specialty for like an electrician or a plumber, like in the trades.
I mean, I don't doubt his intelligence or anything like that. I just like, he's like, this isn't a good argument. It's not even an argument. It's mostly just a fucking hipster stereotype from 2014. It's grievance politics, right? At its worst.
Like you are doing, even if we break it out into the 25th and 75th percentile of median earners, even that lower 25th percentile of people that have those 4-year degrees, so this is our gender studies, English, whatever people want to make fun of, even those people are making more money than somebody with just a high school graduation. And like,
when you break out those numbers racially, though, it doesn't add up in that way.
When you break out the numbers racially, yeah, there's still a disparity, but that disparity starts to shrink when you look at the difference between like a black earner with a 4-year degree and a white earner with a 4-year degree versus like a black earner with just a high school education and a white earner with a high school education. It doesn't disappear completely, but like getting a 4-year degree is one of the few ways that like black people are able to kind of catch up in terms
like, it's just like, I don't want to say this in the like, I don't even mean this in an offensive way, but it's very boomer. Like, it's how boomers, it's like the kind of like, what it feels like is he's like growing old prematurely, if that makes sense, right? I don't know. I shouldn't even say that. That makes it sound like I'm essentializing old people and saying they don't all have grievance politics. There's some cool ass old people out there, okay? I'm not trying to essentialize you demographic that totally doesn't watch me.
Not completely, of course, but it helps.
Would you relieve all college debt by people who haven't graduated, or would you have a problem with that?
Yeah, no, I think there's a separate discussion because those people don't have any of the benefits of like that college degree. Like, I think it's fair to say that like if you haven't graduated, then either a percentage or all of that gets forgiven because you're not reaping the rewards of it.
And it's just kind of weird because like I'm pretty sure he knows how to make actual arguments. Maybe there's so much that could be behind this. Like, there's some chance that he just like encountered these kind of appeals and found them to be effective. Like, right? I don't know.
I don't like the idea that like
the image of Destiny is that he's very, dutiful in terms of consistency, in terms of logic and everything else, but like I don't know, like I mean a lot of this shit gets really emotional and really kind of like I say, this weird personal politics of like outrage at like stereotypes. I don't know.
The top 40% income households have 60% of the debt, and the lowest income 40% of those households have 20% of the debt. That just do.
How's this being a wealthy white guy, I guess.
Because it was
oh my god, thank you so much.
But now there are freaking communist invading radicals.
Thank you, Vamps. Thank you. I felt that the whole debate was staged to educate, huh? Yeah, thank you for the gift sub to Doomscroll, Vamps.
doing like a big stimulus and giving money back to people that have college degrees. It's just like, these are, I feel like, so to be a little personal, I'm somebody that has always hated the
You've already gotten personal. You've already gotten personal and like,
middle class, because before I started making money online, I was
oh wait, he means actual personal. I'm sorry. I was thinking personal in terms of like this idea of just like drawing this kind of like straw person out of, you know, stereotypes and then just like pillaring them.
working class. And as a working class person, the life that you live, like actually living paycheck to paycheck versus like what a middle class person deals with, where it's like, oh no, like I've got to pay $500 a month on my student loan. It's going to take me a
So it's like Steven's argument. Oh yeah, I've heard him go off on this before. This is an interesting thing about him. He remembers being working class. I mean, he would say poor. I don't know. Like maybe get a fact check on that, but whatever. You know, if you say you were poor, Steven. He remembers that, right? And he went from that to being like wealthy. And so he like feels, I guess, a kinship towards the working class, or that which he perceives to be the working class, right? A kinship towards, you know, the wealthy. I'm probably explaining this wrong, but like basically his thing was like he really fucking hates the middle class. Like, Steven, if you ever want to get into politics, yo, that would not be the take to have. Like, you imagine politicians being like, you know, like, we can move forward as an American people, but there's one thing we have to leave behind. Do you know what that is? The stinking middle class. Can you imagine a politician being like, screw you, middle class? Oh my god, it's like the opposite of what they do. It's like the exact opposite. They're all trying to, like, because in the United States, like, a lot more people, like, I don't know, like it's a social construct, right? So what's middle, what's, you know, whatever, right? You know, it's there's no real definition, but like the American perception lends itself towards people thinking that they're middle class, you know, rich people not realizing how well they have it off, poor people wanting to think that they're not, you know, as bad off as they are, like proportionally. It's last place aversion is what we call that, right? The principle that people want to see themselves as like not being, you know, in the worst situation.
Meanwhile, I've got a nice apartment. I've got 2 cars for my family. I've got like I don't think that those are the people that need the most help in society. Like people that are getting jobs as like computer programmers and nurses and all that. I don't think they need the help. I think that this is one of the things I like the most about like how Biden has been approaching stimulus, rather than the Trump top down. It's literally like, are you poor? Are you working? Do you have a child? Is your gross income low? You're going to be the one that gets the money. And that's like the kind of stimulus that, one, has a super high like multiplicative effect when it goes through society, because these people spend money. They're not hoarding it. They're not sitting on it or just like putting it in their Vanguard account, right? And 2, because these people are the ones where it's like I can tell you, like $1,000 to me as a carpet cleaner means infinitely.
Much rather someone acknowledge that finally acknowledge that the US hasn't actually had a middle class for decades. Wouldn't want to see Sam Seder give Dylan any secondhand clout.
More than $1,000 to a guy that just took his bar exam. I don't care if he's black, white, Hispanic, or whatever. Like that money is just so much more valuable going into working class people. And if you have that degree, it's as good as gold. It really is so important. I know we like to mean that it's not, but we can look at a million different stats.
Middle class was always a nebulous myth.
You will never, ever, ever find a stat that shows that you're going to be worse off getting a college degree than not. The earnings of high school workers are lower and lower and lower. That productivity is not growing. Those earnings aren't growing. And the earnings of anybody with a 4-year degree is getting higher and higher and higher and higher and higher. And it's becoming more of a has and has-nots when you look at like who has a degree and who doesn't.
I mean, like again, we're getting back to an issue of, what's the alternative? It's not, I just don't see a situation where somebody is saying that Joe Biden does not have the ability to send that carpet,
Yeah, exactly.
the pipe fitter, the
Yeah,
carpet,
he's not
cutter,
really taking on
thousand
the
dollars as opposed to
argument.
this. I don't. I mean, I
He's
don't
actually, this is
accept the
like a
premise that this
Reagan-esque
is an either
thing.
or.
This is actually kind of a Reagan-esque thing when you think about it. Like, Reagan's argument wasn't like some structural mathematical argument about the budget or, you know, like spending on welfare programs. His argument was there's this lady and she comes to pick up her welfare check. She arrives in a limousine. She has servants like fanning her all the way into the, you know what I mean? And anyway, no, not quite that, but like anyway, the idea was like Reagan wouldn't really describe the woman, but if you were to ask anyone who was hearing that to draw a picture of who they had in mind, they'd invariably be seeing a black woman. So basically, Reagan, like, Reagan's argument wasn't that, like, you know, he wasn't really making an argument against the welfare state. He was making people associate welfare with primarily black women, but yeah, with black people. Like, he also had a story about a young buck, right? He talked about this guy being a young buck, and people, listening to him would invariably see a black dude in their mind, and like, oh, he doesn't need any help. He's able-bodied. He's, I don't know, just kind of like, create these characters, these generic black stereotype characters for white people to hate and associate with welfare, and therefore vote in some cases against what turned out to be their very own interest. So yeah, this is way too similar to like Reagan, like rhetoric, quote unquote rhetoric.
Situation, because I don't see what the alternative is in terms of what he can unilaterally do. You could argue from a political standpoint, and again, I think there's probably maybe a slightly better argument there. Although I'm not convinced that the
Cody Johnston on austerity politics, not yet.
salience, or even that who would be making it on the other side. That if Joe Biden wasn't to unilaterally do this, then the Republican Party would sign off on legislation that would send $1,000 to those people. Mm-hmm. But also, again, this study, it's not comparing people within this. It is looking at
household wealth. Who cares? Student loans. Student loans are going to solve the wealth disparity.
If you're working class and your parents are millionaires, just to make it really explicit, you're in good shape. Your need to build assets.
There's going to be people in DGG that are like, Destiny completely destroyed Sam in this debate. There's going to be people, unironically, that give Destiny the W.
Is less because you're going to have
for moments like that.
Retirement. It's going to come from your parents when they die. Your need to worry about taking care of your parents when they start to get ill, when they have Alzheimer's, when they have high blood pressure, when they need to take medication, and to help them out, to make sure that they can pay rent at one point, is far less. That's an extreme.
Like, most of Destiny's arguments aren't like they're not right-wing arguments, especially on like economic, questions, like actual, like, bills that might come before the like House and Senate, right? His overall take is like, a pretty healthy like welfare state is sort of what he seems to be in favor for. So he's not really making like reactionary economic arguments per se. It's just like he is kind of conditioning his community to accept that sort of programming. And I will call it programming because, chat, Fox News says jump and your grandma says how high, right? Your Fox News rings a bell and your grandma starts to salivate, right? They have these people conditioned.
Example, but that is the dynamic that's at play here, and that's why I think it's legitimate to look at the question of progressivity
I
on
think
as something like this.
we talk about like
with
parents dying though. This is
wealth.
like your parents dying that's a later life thing. I my heart goes out to
Again, let's like fucking stereotype about like when people's parents die, right?
people that this affects, but like if your parents are dying when you're 22, that's like you're in a way different situation. Like parents dying, that's something that should come
Well, when
along.
you're
Ideally,
22
when you're in your late 30s, maybe 40s, maybe 50s. Like if your parents are dying when you're like 22 years old and you have to give like student loan money back to them, I think that's a little bit of a separate argument
no,
in
it's
terms
not
of
a question of first of all, it's simply a question of
But his big, yeah, I guess my point was like his big thing seems to be pushing back on quote unquote dumb lefties, right? So as long as we defeat the dumb lefties argument of like let's do this particular program, like it's generally like dumb lefties like this program, they're fucking cringe, fuck them, right? That's the thing. But then he'll come with this policy that's basically like does the same thing but in a different way and say like this is what we should put in place, you know. It's just weird because it's mostly just like we gotta fucking own Hassan. That's the thing. It's like we just gotta make, if we own Hassan, if we own Vosh, we're doing all right. We'll just take their policy formulated in a different way and just like pretend like, yeah, what they said fucking bad, but this shit like that's,
preparing. Like, look, if if you're 20 years old and you know that your parents are millionaires, you don't have to worry about
hey Amanda Panda, how are you doing?
building assets. You can spend every dollar that comes in. You don't have to put it into a 401k. You don't have to save it for retirement. You don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about putting money aside in case they need it because they need support. You don't have to worry about providing money for them because they just don't make enough because they didn't go to college. It's a different dynamic. I mean, I'm not, if there was an argument
I'm living
that
I'm living a very interesting life, Amanda Panda. I'm living a very, very interesting life. That is like
there's
the
two
positive
options
spin.
on the table. One that would give $1,000 to, or even let's say, Medicare for all or college debt. I would probably go for Medicare for all.
I
But
mean,
the
the
dollar
one
figures that we're
thing
talking
that is true about being a streamer, at least for me, is it is fucking exciting. All right.
about are far less.
Like
When we
the
talk
fame
about
and fortune,
forgiving student
that's
debt.
like
And
yeah, that's very dependent, right?
I, again, this is also money that the government has lent, and it's not even.
But the excitement is real, and sometimes it's a little too close to home, I guess.
I just don't see the either or option here.
It's like me and my ex arguing. He's repeating the same things from the first couple of minutes. Long. Destiny just doesn't seem to be getting it, so yeah, it bears repeating.
I mean, if wealth, you don't perceive wealth
Maybe this time it'll sink in. I don't know.
as having an impact on someone's future life or current life and intergenerational wealth, then I can understand on some level why you perceive
One of Lance's mods always says, Destiny is repeatedly being to the right of Chuck Schumer.
it that way. But in terms of like real living life, to have, I mean, look,
I mean, he does state policy goals that seem to be like from the where we are now. They're pretty ambitious, right? They're pretty ambitious like goals to have like more along the lines of a Scandinavian welfare state. But in terms of like what I hear him saying about like politics in the moment, there is a lot of like sort of like wait the timing is not opportune. So yeah, like in that sense, that's like some Chuck Schumer hours right there.
When I was 20 or 23, I was making $9,000 a year, and I was eating exclusively Chinese food because I'm working at a Chinese restaurant. But to be honest,
I could handle that.
wasn't terribly worried about
Not really. It's not,
my
let's not glorify poverty. That's another thing that you get from Destiny. Like, I don't know what this is. Like, I mean, like half of it's like, like he doesn't want to have to talk of just like, this is the take of some fucking rich guy. He wants to be like, hey, look, I've worked actual fucking working class jobs. Like, let me assume that you're middle class and haven't, right? So I'm actually,
future in the way that maybe someone else working there would have been, because I'm like, you know what, I could take chances because my dad's a lawyer. He's and worst case
bohemian bro.
scenario, I can move home. You know what I mean? Like, that impacts your decisions. The wealth that existed within the context of my family provided me freedom and the ability to risk, and a sense of like, at the end of my life, if I haven't been able to accumulate assets, then I'll be okay. And also, I'm not going to have to worry about like, paying for them. They're going to be fine, at least to a certain point in their age. So
yeah, I guess it just depends on like, because like wealth is something that if you have so many years to acquire, it can grow so much larger than somebody else. Like, who do you think is going to have more trouble providing for their parents?
If you can put that money into assets.
But the problem is that like people have a really hard time, especially young people, understanding like what is wealth. Like, to go back to the Bernie Sanders thing, like people say, oh, Bernie Sanders is a millionaire. He's got $1 million. Having $1 million when you're 80 is way different than having $1 million when you're 25. Like who is wealthier, right? When we have, say, you've just got a guy who's just working normal job, 30, 35 years old. His parents have $500,000 in the bank versus a guy that just graduated as a doctor whose, parents are broke. Well, who's going to have more trouble taking care of their parents, right? The doctor guy, yeah, he's going to take a hit in the beginning, but the NPV, the net present value of that degree, those future earnings are huge. He might be screwed right there. If his parents get in a catastrophic car accident, he's 28, he's doing residency, yeah, maybe that guy will be screwed for a little bit. That one example, well, no, because it'd just be a funeral that way, right?
Yeah.
But like, generally speaking, the guy that's graduating as a doctor or as a lawyer or as working for Amazon, Google, Facebook, it doesn't matter if the other guy that's working at a lawn service have parents that have saved away $500,000.
Loans.
That doctor or
Student
that
loan
lawyer or that managerial
specific.
class person, he's going to outpace the other dude in a decade, and he's going to blow him away, and then his kids are
they
going to be
both
better off for it.
agree
Every
that-
part of his family and life is going to be better off for it.
But your
They both agree
presumption
that, like,
is that person
there
is
should
going
be
to
a
be able
free-
to
a
build
free option
assets
for
because they're
college.
not going to have the expenses associated with that, but they're going to have more.
But in terms of like forgiveness, like Destiny, Sam wants kind of like a forgiveness without a means testing, because if you actually look into means testing, you'll find that the red tape costs more than you would recoup by gatekeeping some of the wealthy people that might apply for that, right? The regardless of how you feel about whether loans should be forgiven past a certain income, or like that there should be a cap or whatever, it actually costs the government more to do that. So in other words, if your argument is to like spend less money on a given program, right, the way to do that is to not means test. So means testing is just, it makes people feel good. It makes people feel like they're doing, something, or that there's this moral hazard that's being avoided or something like that. Some like they're sticking it to some rich person that's trying to get student loan forgiveness. But in reality, all it does is like, puts more bureaucracy in and makes it cost more money.
They're going to have more expenses associated with that, and also the family with wealth.
He's being a knucklehead about this mainly because he has this thing that he likes to find lefty political opinions and argue against them. Like, it's his main thing. And it's to the extent that, like, if you ask him, if you really were to talk to him about this and be like, all right, Steven, okay, I see that you don't want student loan forgiveness. What is your plan, right? And he'd have several types of student loan forgiveness that he says, like, but like when you're asking him what's his plan, it's like, what would you do in the perfect world? It's not necessarily what are you going to support today. It's like, theoretically, if you were, able to, oh my god, why do I have to do the snap? Don't do the snap. That's the snap is Thanos. Let's not do the snap. Okay. If you were to just, clap your hands and be at like the kind of like government that you want to be at, that he'll describe like a pretty generous, like Scandinavian style welfare state, but and he achieves a lot of the things that the lefty policy positions were going for. It's in a slightly different way, but I have to feel like most of it is just for him to be able to be like, yo, the lefties are wrong, and then like propose something really similar.
I mean, that's the
Hey,
illustration
Ninetales.
of Bernie
Regressdeny, yeah.
Sanders at that age, having accumulated that money when he's 80, versus the person whose parents, when they go to college, have that kind of money, is the point. And so, when that person goes out and they graduate college, and their parents are going to help out with. Their parents are going to help out. Well, they've already helped out maybe a little bit with college. They don't have to take the same type of size of loans. But we also know that, like, okay, my kids, preschool. Well, we'll pay for your kids' preschool. We'll help you out with that, and you can put some money away. I mean, that's the dynamic.
Hi, Melissa. How are you doing?
That is the implications of having this intergenerational wealth. Is you have help. You have
can we get a shout out
that
in chat for Ninetales Cosmic Fox
as you're getting older. And if in the absence of that, again, those dollars have to do more.
Wait.
I mean, it's the same concept.
Oh my god, like I misread somebody's
of being poor is
name.
more expensive than being rich, because you have the ability to deploy your money in such a way that is more efficient when you're wealthy, because you have more control over it. You have more flexibility. It's same dynamic.
I mean, like, I understand everything you're saying, but I think that in a heartbeat, somebody with wealthy parents and poor parents, and somebody that has a really good degree versus a high school education, I think you would trade out your wealthy parents for a better degree every single time, unless your parents are absolutely loaded.
Well, then why wouldn't you go get that degree?
Well, that's what people that go to school do, right?
No,
but
I'm
this
saying-
is like that's actually a whole other different kind of problem too. Is that something that we've seen in other areas?
If Destiny's playing a video game right now.
When you look at education, when you make education free or discounted, sometimes that helps like people that are already doing pretty well even more, because it's not a matter of like the cost of going to school; it's the opportunity cost of not staying home and helping with family and doing that stuff as well. So you get like, you make like, say, I'm not against free college, but say you like make college free. The people that can take advantage of that are the people that can just have a 4-year break in their life, go do that. Their family is fine. Whereas people that are like working poor, that have to work to support their household, they can't take advantage of that free college. They actually need like a subsidy. They need to get like payment transfers to them in order to go to school. I think.
Well, but that I mean, that's consistent with what I'm saying. Like you just said that if you were, maybe I misheard you, but you said that I would rather be a guy with poor parents and get the degree than rich parents and not get the degree. But if you have rich parents, you have the ability to get the degree. You don't even need to take a loan.
We keep saying that, but the reality is that 60% of the debt is held by the top 40% of like earners.
No.
There's a stat.
But they're not earners yet.
But they will be. That's why you get the degree. Unless I mean, there's a separate conversation. Do we think that the degrees are like, they're not actually going to make money, or because this is an argument that I hear a lot too. A lot of people seem to be, and a lot of these arguments, I'm not saying you're doing this, but it feels like a lot of the arguments are people saying like, well, these degrees are ultimately worthless.
Well, I think that there's enough data to show, at least, up until this time, that the degree, does help you for most people. It doesn't help in the same way for black people as it does for white people. There's a disparity there, but
I mean, okay, so Destiny, the degree is definitely not worthless, okay, in a aggregate, but over time, or not on a individual level, there are people that are going to be like out of work for a substantial amount of time, right? While you're out of work, that degree doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? Because you're multiplying by 0 hours, by 0, whatever, right? It's just like, right, like so, like, it, depending on the situation, right? I don't know. It's just like,
The income is just simply not as worth as
so
much.
because somebody can be in a situation where they have the degree, but it's not doing them any good. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, if you're really serious about the Scandinavian welfare state, you got to make sure that nobody falls through the cracks, Destiny. And you got to be more concerned with that than you are with this fandom free rider thing that you seem to be on.
If you have more claims to that money, right? Like, you've got to look at like wealth to debt ratio to get an assessment of what your real lived experience is.
That's not. We don't even evaluate loans like that, like wealth to debt. You always look
The
at
Phantom Free Rider sounds like a comic book villain. Yeah, basically.
income to debt.
Maybe a
right? Like, you're
libertarian
not just
comic book
looking at, like,
villain.
unless you're literally getting
Well,
a secured
no,
loan
if you
on
get
your.
a mortgage, they're going to look at your wealth too.
They're gonna look at your income.
Oh my god.
No, they're
Wait. There was a change in the law, right? It's not like free community college yet, but there was something. I'm trying to remember when. Was it under Obama maybe?
going to look at your wealth, and I can assure you, they're going to look at your wealth and your liabilities, your assets, and your income.
Well, okay. I promise you that they're going to look at your income. They might look at
No,
some level
no,
of
I
wealth, but
agree.
like that
they look
income
at
is going to
Wrong,
be that
wrong again, Destiny.
income is
They
going to be
look-
the deciding factor, right? If you have really high wealth and no income, you're not going to get a mortgage. But they're going to make you pay cash for it or put down a huge down payment on it, like 50%. But if you have like really high income and not as much wealth built yet, especially if you're younger, they'll write you the loan. If you've got like a consistent income, you can show over like 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years. Income is absolutely the biggest factor, right?
Well, income might be a bigger factor in terms of getting a loan from work, but they certainly do look at wealth, of course. I mean, that plays into it significantly. If you have no money in
$3,000
your
per
bank,
semester.
I
That
can
sounds
assure
about
you,
right. Yeah.
that you're not going to get that loan.
Lenders look at
and
your bank
because
statements.
You could lose that job tomorrow. But nevertheless, wealth to debt is it seems to me a better assessment of like of what your real lived experience is. But I mean, look, if at the very least, I think that, like, if it comes down to, what is a better measure to progressivity, it's just a matter,
I wish I could be this confidently
I
wrong.
guess, of disposition on some level. I don't know if there is a right or wrong answer on that from
That's true. It only gets you an associate's, which is like, I mean, it might. It depends on what it is. Like, oh god, I knew somebody who got an associate's in pulmonary, oh my god, respiratory, I think it was respiratory therapy or something like that. It was a 2-year degree, and it was like, definitely, it was a tough job, but it got you like a decent
a
job.
data perspective. It's just really just an experiential.
I
one, and
pray for the confidence of a wrong YouTuber.
It was possible to like flip a switch. I don't know if the Department of Education do that. I don't know if Biden has control. But like for me, like I think having like income-based repayment or income-driven repayment feels like the obvious like best way that.
I mean, we do have that. It's just like, it's not okay. They make it really hard to like. You got to be really good at filing paperwork. And what I'm saying by that, I don't just mean like, you got to file your paperwork. You got to file your paperwork right. That's true. You might have your paperwork disappear. And they might not call you to let you know that it disappeared. And you might just be like, hey, where's that? Like, wasn't that supposed to, like, I wasn't supposed to get on the income-driven repayment plan? And it's like, we lost your papers. I'm so sorry. Yeah, no, it's a fucking mess. It's a fucking mess. So you got that, and then, like, they'll take a certain percentage of your income. Like, I mean, it's better than not having that at all. But it is a far fucking cry from adequate, Destiny.
if you come out of school and you're not making that much money, then your repayments are going to be structured. I think Australia, I think the UK does. I think a lot of countries
Don't qualify for the grants available. I'm too old and my credit
do this.
sucks.
Where as you earn more, then you start to pay back more if you need to, rather
Oh, thank you for the love, Amanda Pena
than
Sensei.
just everybody is saddled with like a blanket debt. Would you be in favor of like that kind of like program if that was
You have to bind the books separately too.
something that was like made the default instead of an opt-in in the U.S.?
I mean, I would
True.
prefer debt relief. I think that would do, because I think with the income-based repayment, again, we're ignoring where people sit in the only issue for people is not just their income. It is the other assets that they have available to them, either ones they can anticipate in the future or ones that they have now, right? I mean, like, my pension is not something I have now. I don't have access to it. I can't access it until I'm 65, but it does provide me with a material benefit now, which is that I know I don't have to save. I only have to save X amount of dollars. And so, I think the problem with the income-based repayment, it's better than the payment structures that we have now, but it is less desirable, it seems to me, than debt forgiveness on both a drag on our economy and a drag on many people's ability to sort of like to live a better life. And also, I would say it's a detriment to our society insofar as like who's going into more, in my opinion, socially beneficial jobs, but are lower wage than others. So we're losing out on quality social workers and teachers because of certain debt. We're losing out on more public interest lawyers because of debt. I mean, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I don't think there's a problem with like having like, and I think we already do this in parts of the U.S. where there are certain types of degrees that you get like reimbursed for depending on if you go into like public field work. I know that there are
that
true.
Also was something.
I feel that I just like dropped out of like a school where like I was like the only one there that didn't have like money. Like it was same kind of situation, but like I don't know. I ended up going to the school for something that I fucking can't do it. I don't know. I just like anyway, yeah, my life's kind of fucked right now and I'm trying to figure out. It looks like I'm going to be moving a little bit further away than I thought. Okay. Like yeah. So like my life's totally in flux. I'm going to try to keep streaming as much as I can. There might be some discontinuity. Please don't think that I'm going anywhere. I care about you all very much, and I'll be on Discord at the very least. If anybody's not like on Discord yet, like just get there, because there might be a time where that's the hangout. It's like on Discord or something like that. But yeah, I don't know. Shit's actually kind of fucked in a way that's really impossible for me to understand, to explain. That's what I'm trying to say. I can't explain to you why shit's so fucked in my life, why I have to move, but just trust me. I am.
That came up. There was a program,
and I mean, I would have had a pretty good salary with that job, but it's just like something that like the closer I got, the more I actually did what I'd be doing for work, the more I realized this is not like, it's not something I'm going to be good at, and it's not something I'm going to enjoy. It's going to be something that makes me miserable and something that stresses me the fuck out, and I'm worried that like I don't know, I'm just not the person for the job, right? And I do have things that I'm good at. I think that my political analysis is pretty good, so I'm going to keep working at that. But yeah, like I mean, there's like financial realities too, chat, and like like the more I struggle financially on Twitch, sort of like having been hit with a lot of lies and stuff, it's like the more that reality gets here, that of me not being able to do this full time,
that was specific,
and kind of not being able to go into the fights that I've been engaging in with as full of force, not being able to be like the only one to stand up for something, because you just can't really like you can't really advance a stream like that way. You can't really like build
Specifically about that we had the 10-year public service program from 2007 to 2017. Those people graduate. They worked for 10 years in those
mostly content.
jobs, which
Yeah.
supposedly would have relieved their debt. And apparently, if you go to the consumer complaint registry in your state, you'll see that all these servicers have been engaging in massive amount of fraud. That's the other thing that is like we didn't even get to, was just like this is the servicers are just as despicable as they were during the financial crisis in 2007, 2008. And these loan servicers are really
Yeah, I mean, like, there's a style. Actually, yeah. If anybody like, so like I said, go to the Discord. That's how you get involved in the community. I have had some like community edited videos before. There's a style guide for that. There is a style guide. So like if you kind of like adhere to the style guide, it's like it's more likely, and that it's like, oh, Adobe, yeah, you're more likely to get something put out if it's like within the style guide, because that just kind of like keeps it on like close enough to like what the branding. I don't know, branding. It's like not really a branding person, but
I mean, if you look at the consumer complaints in a significant,
yeah, I always like to like, and especially if people have like certain videos that they like want to see come out, like that really helps if they're able to edit, because like there's a lot of stuff that I do a lot of segments on things, and I don't always get to put everything out. In fact, lately it's been like really a struggle to get much, like I used to put like a lot more like of this kind of stuff up on YouTube, and I really do need to get somewhere out there, because the people love it on YouTube. People love debate analysis. They love to spend time with me. There's debates that they would not otherwise watch that they'll watch with me just because like I'm a filter, and if they don't like Destiny, if they don't like whoever the debate's with, they tend to appreciate that having that critical voice there. So
amount of fraud, it seems to me.
Sure, and that might be the case. I mean, there could be fraud in literally everything, right? There are people that fraudulently file tax forms
Without a
together.
doubt.
Yeah, of course.
But
if
I
that
started buzzing.
happens, that's bad, and it should be fixed, obviously, of course.
My experience during the but I also think it might be a little bit endemic when you have servicers who are getting money based on fees and whatnot. The incentive structure is really messed up, it seems to me. But
Yeah, it could be the case. Just on this thing, when we talk about how like student loan debt has this drag on people's ability to live better lives and everything, and when it's like a drag on the economy, why do so many people still get degrees then?
You know what? I think there's a lot of people. Look, I've known people who work in the for-profit college industry, and I consider that business to be more or less a criminal activity.
Like working at private schools, or what do you mean?
No. Private colleges, the for-profit colleges. Excuse me.
Okay.
And I think there's a lot of people who, particularly people who
I hope
do
not
not
sign
come
up for
from
that. Oh my
wealthy
God.
families, who may be first generation going to college, who are hoodwinked into these for-profit universities, and just simply don't have the savvy. They know that they sense that they need a college degree to go further in their career, and then they find that this college degree from blankety blank for-profit university isn't really worth much, or that they can't afford to maintain it. And so either they graduate and find that a degree does not pay off in the way that they think it's going to, or they get through a semester or two and realize they can't afford it, and then they're straddled with this debt that they don't have.
Yeah, if we're talking about like the unaccredited like scam colleges or whatever, well, I call them.
No, they're accredited. They're all accredited. They're accredited. That's why they wouldn't be eligible for public loans if they weren't accredited. I mean, the Obama administration made some headway in sort of like tightening what those credentials things, and then of course the Trump administration came in and blew it apart. If you want to look at something that goes even that performed even better than Jeff Bezos's rocket trip, take a look at like funds of for-profit colleges literally 15 minutes after the election was over in 2016. They shot up like this, like a trajectory like this. They have since come back down to earth in terms of the stock market, because the pandemic was also problematic for them too, I think, but counterintuitively. But
okay, sure. But getting away from like the I guess there might be some strange.
well, that's
like,
a huge portion of, these massive Fortune 500 public, I mean, for-profit universities. 95% of their income, their revenue, comes from student loans.
Sure, but when we say
a
huge portion, what I'm asking is like, do you agree that for the vast majority of people, 95% plus, like having a college degree does not represent a drag on their ability to live a better life, even with loans included? That the vast majority of these people, 95% plus, are coming out better, assuming they graduate, than when they went into it.
I don't know that figure. I would imagine it's higher. It's above 50%. Let's put it that way. I don't know if it's 95%, but we're not talking about we're not talking about the cohort of people who graduate college. We're talking about the cohort of people who take student loan debt, and that includes people who don't graduate and people who've graduated.
The problem with the whole free rider, obsession, you'll find this in a libertarian politics. You'll find this, like,
a college degree,
in a lot of Republican politics.
100% of your income can be
our
deployed
effort to prevent somebody from being a dick and taking advantage of a situation
existence can be deployed to
may or may
building
not even
assets over
exist.
time.
We end up
That's not
cutting
necessarily
off
the case
real
if you
people
don't come
from help that
wealth,
they
if you don't
need,
have a wealthy
from
household.
help that we can
I mean,
provide.
If you're married to
And that's
someone
what we
who,
lose. We lose
who
track
also
of that
doesn't have
person.
student loan debt,
In efforts to punish
um,
the free
and you
rider,
have two
we lose
incomes,
track of the
obviously that
person
makes
that's
a
going to
big,
fall through the
difference
cracks.
as to how you can save. I mean, just
And
as
that's
an
just,
example,
it's such a
when we
waste.
talk
It's
about
such a
household
fucking
wealth. But
tragedy.
I got to go.
That grievance can
and
do
I
this.
think,
That
we may not agree on this, but at least I feel like we
the mobilization of grievance that you see here with Destiny, that's like kind of a hallmark
household and
of
intergenerational wealth. Yes.
right-wing
Sorry, we didn't get to the
political.
men's rights.
Oh no, I didn't care as much about that one. I was more
Not
curious
much
about the
to
college
say
one.
about that, frankly.
All right. Well, hey, listen, I appreciate the conversation. Where can people find you? Everybody knows who you are, but just in case.
Out on the street, Flatbush, more often than not.
Gotcha.
Walking back and forth.
All
They're
right.
right here. They can find me right there.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. I really
You're
appreciate
having
the
a debate
conversation.
tomorrow.
All right, thanks,
Nice.
All right. Have a good one.
You too.
I didn't think we'd get in the weeds so much on the wealth versus income thing. I thought that was a gimme.
You're making the
Did he move you
thumbnail?
on something?
Or-
No, I think that what I said earlier, I think was correct. That student loan forgiveness would grow the gap between poor blacks and wealthy blacks and poor whites and wealthy whites, but it wouldn't bridge the gap between black and white. I don't think so. No. Do you really feel that the people who made the study didn't take into account age when determining wealth? Yes, they did not take into account age. That's why it was so strange, was because it doesn't make any sense to look at, like, because wealth is just.
It feels so weird to have him saying that, because I swear to God, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is other centrist, like, political dudes that say this, but isn't there something about, like, doesn't Stephen kind of, like, rail against identity politics a lot? And it sounds like what he's saying is that, like, he's gonna oppose an individual policy which, makes things better for a lot of people because it doesn't make everything better for all people. And, like, even while admitting that he has, like, a set of policy prescriptions outside of this like he has an alternate, like, sort of idea of how he would do, like, it's not like he's against student loan forgiveness. It's gonna be means tested, and it's gonna be, like, most of, like he said, most of it's gonna be more like, what's funny is that he doesn't seem to understand that income driven repayment, like, already exists. Right? That's not a new thing. It would be an innovation. It's not like this is all we were missing. We didn't have, that's a great idea. You know what? The amount you could pay is based on your income. You have that. We have that. That does exist. It hasn't solved our problems. And yeah, it's just like, yeah, it's a very right-wing argument to say that because a one policy won't fix all our problems at the same time that it shouldn't be implemented. And the way he says that, like, he talks about it being increasing the income gaps, like, you're talking about in all cases money that will be in people's pockets that wouldn't be in their pockets otherwise. In no case in this policy are you talking about money that would be in like a poor person's pocket that's now not going to be. But he sometimes nods to that too. He sometimes acts like somehow we have two options. You spend the money on student loan repayment, or you spend the money on like really needy people, right? So it's almost like by saying like I care about the student loan repayment, you're saying I don't care about like people, you know, really on the edge, like in a bad situation. And the problem is we weren't just about to spend that money on poor people. That wasn't in the cards. It's not a choice of this or this. This one's on the table. That one is not on the table. So it's just such a... I don't know. I don't even know what you want to say.
Majorly a factor of age. I'm not gonna like read an entire Twitter thread or whatever.
Is it CTV?
In the middle of a conversation, but in their policy brief for the Roosevelt Institute, Eaton, Goldstein, Hamilton, and Worry make several claims regarding my paper on student loan forgiveness with Yanellis and conclude that forgiveness is a progressive policy. Their critique is misguided in several ways. Our response is available on SSRN, but let me make a few points here.
No, nothing. Interesting.
EGHW argue that the consequences of forgiveness should be studied by considering the full population, not just borrowers. We agree and include non-borrowers in our analysis. We think that by raising this point, EGHW implicitly mischaracterized our work. EGHW argue that households should be sorted by wealth, not by earnings. But wealth inequality among young adults is dwarfed by inequality in lifetime earnings. Sorting households by total wealth equals wealth plus future earnings show that for them, the main source of inequality is in lifetime earnings. Wealth does not mean much next to human capital early in the life cycle. I never expect to have to argue this point because this is like really, really, really obvious to me. Like, I would much rather be a doctor that has a net worth of negative $500,000 when I'm 35 than I would be like a normal person without a job that has $500,000 at age 60 or even 55. The early expenditure of capital to build human capital is so much more valuable. But that's just like something that's like, it's like plainly obvious to me. It's embarrassing that he would think a bank would value having to liquidate. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it might be like, I don't want to speak because I haven't gotten I've only gotten 2 mortgages. The bank has never cared. The bank has always been way more fixated on my income than my assets. Like, you don't secure a mortgage with an asset. You secure it with a house, right? Like, I don't know why they would care that much. Like, I got my first mortgage when I had literally, I think like $5,000 in the bank. Like, literally all of my money went towards my down payment for my first house. What they cared about the most was my income. But maybe that's different in some places. But I don't know. I've never heard of like, I don't know. People being like fixated on your overall wealth to qualify for a mortgage. The main source of inequality is in lifetime earnings. Wealth does not mean much next to human capital early life cycle. Moreover, we show in our appendix that even in the bottom quartile of the wealth distribution, wealth is concentrated among high earners. The econ logic of educational investment is to trade present wealth through tuition payments and years out of the labor force in exchange for higher lifetime earnings. Another term for this concept is like what is the net present value of something, right? Wealth isn't a good measure to compare the well-being of recent medical graduates to blue-collar workers. So this is kind of like what I'm talking about, right? EGHW argued that the balance/income ratio is a good measure of progressiveness, but higher balance/income ratios among low earners are, in part, a mechanical consequence of low earners not having to repay their debt under current income-driven repayment programs. As we explained in our paper, low earners with high debt-to-income ratio can always get substantial forgiveness under income-driven repayment rules. Because they do not make payments, their balance will keep increasing until it is eventually forgiven under existing rules. Current forgiveness proposals cannot cancel the high debt of low earners that is already scheduled for cancellation under current rules. The incremental effect of broad forgiveness is to cancel the debt of people who are currently expected to repay high earners. By overlooking this essential insight from our study, EGHW do not estimate the benefits of new policy proposals, but the sum of new/proposed and existing forgiveness policies. EGHW argue that present value computations overlook the fact that each dollar of forgiveness has a greater effect in the lives of poorer households, and therefore forgiveness is progressive, despite distributing more to the rich in actuarial terms. We think this logic is twisted, which is what I thought when I said I couldn't believe when I read this. Like, no way, there's got to be something I'm missing. The fact that the marginal utility of money is higher for poor individuals is what makes policies distributing money to the top of the distribution undesirable from a utilitarian point of view. However, assessing progressiveness in utility term is conceptually wrong. By that logic, giving $1 million to all billionaires and $1,000 to the unemployed is a progressive policy. It benefits the poor more in utility terms.
But his takes
Indeed,
are becoming more
billionaires would
center. I don't
derive
know.
no happiness from an extra million. This is a good example as well. By that logic, utility being concave in consumption, any policy would need to benefit the
wonder
rich
how much
exponentially
of
more in dollars
Destiny-
terms
okay.
to not be regressive. By that logic, giving
Like, how much of his actual politics is like driven by the sense of like, I hate this kind of person, I hate this kind of person, and that kind of person, oh, fuck them. Fuck them. That kind of person, oh, no. Absolutely, you know what I mean? Like, how much of his politics is just like this idea of like, you know, I met this one person who was like, took student loans and he was a complete dick. He was a complete dick and his parents were rich. Why don't they just repay the loans? Why don't, you know what I mean? And it's like, okay, dude, that's your roommate from college or whatever. You know, that's not like everybody.
less bread to hungry kids is not regressive because they enjoy each bite more.
He does that
than
to
the original study was.
transdreamers?
Yeah, I don't know. I was like, fuck, I didn't think we get so hung up on the Roosevelt study because the
my
wealth
God.
thing
Okay.
seems like such a not a good point to bring up ever. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know, worked against
Are you in
you.
favor of forgiving loans the person didn't complete the degree? Yeah, sure, because you're not getting any of the benefit then of your college loan, right? So there should be some way to forgive that loan.
Resentment
Because
sting?
they're not like reaping any of the rewards of having the 4-year degree.
Oh yeah, I guess he
I
has.
feel
I guess he
like,
has. I wonder if I was
don't
in
wanna
that. If I was in
mischaracterize
that
him.
stereotype cluster too.
I didn't want to push him this part because I like Sam, and I don't want to burn a bridge. I didn't want to burn a bridge before it even existed. But it really does feel to me, and I got these vibes hardcore. It really does feel to
I feel like he's debated Sam Seder before. Am I wrong?
me that he doesn't believe that
What
college
does he mean it didn't exist yet?
degrees are worth it. It really feels to me like a lot of people don't think that, because every time I would ask him, like, do you think it's worth it to get a college degree? I felt like I always got like a, well, private colleges are weird. Well, some
Not private colleges, Steven. Like, although maybe, I don't know. No. I'm sorry. Let me not get distracted. Sam was talking about for-profit colleges.
people get scammed. Well, some people, it feels like
No, like I mean, pretty much everybody gets scammed. You don't get a worthwhile degree at a for-profit college.
people are like that is, I'm telling you,
This is what you do.
I'm
You lose
telling-
the debate, and then you try to win the PR cycle.
you, college degrees are like golden tickets right now in society. Like, yeah, he's like 50%. Like, college degrees are unbelievably
You get a lifetime supply of chocolate.
important right now in society if you want to make it in terms of society. Something like reparations or targeting stimulus to non-college degree holders would be more appropriate than debt forgiveness. Yeah, for sure. Oh yeah. So even when we talk about like people that get bad degrees or shit, like you can look at like the median earnings. So this is like, what do the people at the top of a 4-year, this is just bachelor's, by the way. So what do the people at the top make, right? Is 69,000, and at the bottom is 35,000. Even people at the bottom here are still out earning like high school diploma people. This is like our bottom 25th percentile, right? With our median being a full 20,000 ahead, right? How long does it take to fully pay off loans now on average? I can see the argument that everything's delayed because the loans are worth it, but it gets a degree in the long. They're shorter to pay back now than they were in the 70s and 80s. Like, I think the average time to pay back is like 10 years or something. This is like how long, like this is the years to recoup the cost of a bachelor's degree from 1970 to 2013. It looks like it's hovering at around 10 years now, right? In the 70s and early 80s, it was about 20 years, maybe a little higher, maybe a little lower. By for-profit, he meant universities that advertise on TV like Phoenix University, not all private universities. Oh, okay. I feel like the race argument took so much time. The race argument is like it's such a weird way to like do stats. In that Twitter thread, they mentioned it pretty well, but it's almost like, let's say that black people are 10% of the population and they take out like 15% of the loans. And then let's say that like white people are, we'll just say it's only white people, like are 90% of the population, and they take out like 85% of the loans. This is like saying like if we wanted to give $1 trillion to student loan debt, and we give $850 billion to white people and then $150 billion to black people, this is actually incredibly progressive. It's really progressive to give $850 billion to white people and $150 billion to black people, because we're looking at like, but this is because you're warping the numbers to like make an argument that I don't think is a good.
You're gonna
argument.
go smoke
like,
and
this
crash.
Is just not like what like. How is this bridging divides between society? I don't know. I think this is, I just think this is a bad, I think this is a bad argument.
Yeah, have a good sleep.
But if you play around with numbers enough, or like do like, well, let's look at household wealth.
Can
or just
the mods
future,
hit the
blah, blah, blah. Like, you can
Discord?
look at, like,
If anybody's
just one
not in the
number and try to get
Discord
the argument
yet,
that you want, but
we have a
I don't
Discord.
know.
It's a pretty chill place when no one's
On
eating
page 7,
soup
this shows
in the
that even bad
BC.
degrees are positive ROIs. Oh, yeah. Well, because people will meme about, like, oh, you just want a gender studies degree. Even if you get a fucking whatever degree, like, most of these are still going to make money.
Trouble with soup eaters, but, like, you know, other than the soup eaters, it should be fine.
Compared to
as long as
anything
no
else.
one's
Like, you'd have to get, like,
eating
a
soup.
super loser degree.
I'm so
to not,
teasing,
like,
Neko. I'm so teasing.
Not that those are bad.
Oh my god, I shouldn't have even. Oh my god. He's 100% going off of Canceled,
Warren's
Neko.
policy analysis
Oh my
proposal. She's most concerned about closing the racial wealth gap.
I canceled
but,
Neko
like,
before
if
she
you want to
even
close
started.
racial
Damn
wealth
it.
gaps, like, I don't think
Forget
you
I
do
said
that
that,
in
chat.
education.
Forget I said that.
I think that investment has to come like from other places. This is like another way of looking at it. If we look at your total
I don't
wealth,
think Destiny likes
right?
reparations, but
If we
that's a
take, like,
different thing
blue collar
too.
worker, this is essentially what we're saying. If a blue collar worker starts at this level of wealth and then starts working for their whole life, so like if we say this is like when you're like 5, 10.
Oh my god,
15,
I think I get
20,
it, Steven.
25,
I don't
30,
know,
35,
chat. I don't know. I'm gonna hit the button. I'm gonna make the machine go burr.
We'll say that like you're 70 here.
Chat, thank
right?
you for so much for
Let's say
hanging
that you're
out with
20
me.
here. People like
Like I said, my stream's gonna be all over the place.
and then we like take like the wealth of a
just
person
like
here.
you know,
Like
yeah.
we're probably negative quite a bit.
I'm streaming mornings sometimes. There's
And then we're,
Neko.
like,
There's
doing
Neko. Oh my
this.
god, hey Neko, how is it going?
Like when we're targeting debt relief,
I
I don't
like
want to go to a
soup,
household
too.
and
Just
compare
for the
this
record,
guy's
I also
fucking
like
wealth
soup.
here
I'm also a
to
soup
this fucking guy's wealth
aficionado.
here. Like we should be looking
I
at
enjoy
like, what is
soup.
your income trajectory?
Praxia, you
right?
just
What
got
is
here. I'm
the
so sorry for
total
reading
expected
out
lifetime
right
earnings?
as you
Like,
got
that's
here.
going to be the most
Thank you
important
everybody
thing,
for
not
being
what your
here.
current wealth
Thank
is.
you for putting up with the weird debates that I watched.
There's actually a really funny meme.
And yeah, I will catch you all
I think
tomorrow.
I don't know what it was arguing for, but there's a meme that shows
I'm gonna be
like it's like
meow,
4 people
fly
on the
my
screen,
pretties. I
and
don't
it's
know,
like,
chat.
There's like a kid walking and his net worth is negative 20,000. There's a doctor in the background or a dentist and his net worth is negative 57,000.
You've been here for you were
And then
lurking.
There's like
Okay.
a business owner, his net worth
thanks
is
for
negative
hanging
20
out.
because they all have
Meow.
loans. And then there's like a homeless guy with like a cup and it's like his net worth is like $5.
Everybody say hi to Willow for
Technically,
me.
he has the highest net worth of everybody there. Doesn't really feel
Look
like
for
it, right?
solidarity.
Remember to hit that like and subscribe. And don't
Indeed.
forget the notification
Don't
bell.
forget that
My videos
notification.
show up right in
Moi
your
moi.
feed.
I had no idea this was going to happen.
Soup for everyone. Soup for everyone. Then I run a food.